This story is set at the headquarters of the American naval base in Guantanamo, Cuba. Two members of the American Marines entered the barracks of a Marine named William Santiago and kidnapped him. Moving to Washington, D.C., Lieutenant Commander Joanne Galloway handed over Santiago's murder case files, suspecting Lance Corporal Dawson and Private First Corporal Downey. They were suspected of Santiago's murder due to Santiago was found dead just an hour after the kidnapping with his mouth bleeding. Responding to the case, Major Galloway asked his leader Captain West to be assigned as a lawyer to accompany the two Marines. Galloway reasoned that the appointed lawyer should understand the duties of Marines themselves, besides being an expert in the law, and Galloway considered herself to be qualified for the job. However, Captain West did not approve of her becoming a lawyer for the two Marines because Galloway was a Navy provost officer, so she is not suitable as a lawyer for the two suspects. On the softball field, Lieutenant Daniel Coffey or Danny was seen playing softball. His colleagues approached him in anger since he has ignored an important meeting. He was expected to meet him 15 minutes ago, but he ignored it. He was rather a sloppy person. The next morning, during a meeting, he was assigned to oversee two Marines who were murder suspects of their comrade in Guantanamo. Lieutenant Sam was assigned to assist him in doing his duty. They proceeded to meet Galloway to check on the suspect's case files. Galloway was not very fond of Danny's sloppiness and doubted his ability to defend the two Marines. It was reasonable because Galloway suspected something odd in Santiago's murder case. She carried out various investigations on Colonel Nathan Jessup, who will soon be promoted to general and promoted to director of the National Security Council, the actions of Santiago, who wrote a letter asking mutation to another unit, and Santiago's threat to his comrades to expose the violation in Guantanamo. In addition, Galloway also believed that the two Marines were innocent and warned Danny to watch out for himself during his visit to Guantanamo to look for new evidence, since the Marines' behavior there was a bit different. Before his death, Santiago often wrote letters to various institutions from the top command to the senator, asking for mutation from his current unit in Cuba. Santiago explained that he has many difficulties and was physically weak, so he can't carry on his duties. He also mentioned his willingness to expose various violation practices like fence shooting that existed in the American naval base in Cuba. Unfortunately, the letter fell into the hands of Colonel Jessup. He was not very happy about the letter and Santiago's behavior, which he believed had broken the chain of command in his base. He then held a meeting with the deputy commander of the base, Lieutenant Colonel Markinson, and the platoon commander, Lieutenant Kendrick. Markinson suggested transferring Santiago immediately, but Colonel Jessup did not seem to agree with the proposal. He then scolded Kendrick for his incompetence in guiding his subordinate, Santiago, and ordered him to guide his subordinate. Markinson did not agree with Colonel Jessup's solution, but couldn't do anything about it since the leader of Colonel Jessup was the leader of the base. The two suspects were then detained at the Military Detention Center in Washington, D.C. Galloway returned to meet Danny, who was doing softball. Galloway got irritated seeing how Danny was enjoying his time while his clients were locked in jail. Danny said he was not suitable to handle such an important case, but Galloway said that the decision was right by assigning him for the job. She also added that she already knew the truth about him.
I do know you, Daniel Alistair Caffey. Your father's Lionel Caffey. You went to Harvard Law, then you joined the Navy.
Danny was the son of Lionel Coffey, former Attorney General, and legendary legal advocate. He also graduated from Harvard's law school and joined the Marines after that. He was surprised by how much Galloway knew about him. Galloway then said she couldn't believe that Downey and Dawson were the murderers of Santiago, since both of them didn't have any intention nor reason to do so. Danny asked for the forensic lab test that proved the victim was poisoned with lactic acidosis, but Galloway doubted it. The test result came way too fast, since Santiago died at 1:00 while the result came just 2 hours after that. That would be impossible for the doctor to determine the cause of death within such little time. Just before she left, she asked Danny if he knew about the red code.
You know what a code red is?
The next day, Danny and Sam met the two suspects at the detention house. They questioned the suspects if they knew about the red code. Dawson said that it was an action for returning Marines who got off course. Danny then asked what are the types of red code and if what they are doing is a form of red code. Dawson said that it's a red code. Danny asked why did Santiago get a red code. Dawson explained that Santiago had gone off track because he had broken the chain of command. Danny also asked for the chronology of events that night. Danny turned his questions to the fence shooting in Guantanamo done by Dawson, written in Santiago's letter. Dawson admitted that, but it was only because of a misunderstanding between him and the Cubans whom he thought were going to shoot him. Danny again asked why did Santiago get a red code. The defending Dawson, still with confidence, said that he had violated their command code. They said that their purpose in doing that was just to teach Santiago a lesson, so the two suspects feel they are innocent because they were just enforcing the ethics code. Before leaving, Danny said the thing they needed to understand: he is the only friend they've got. After that, the military prosecutor Captain Jack Ross visited Danny and said that he sued both of the suspects for a 12-year sentence in prison. In addition, Jack also said that in that night, Lieutenant Kendrick gave orders to all Marines not to touch Santiago. Outside, Danny approached Galloway. He felt uncomfortable because Galloway was considered to be too interfering in his affairs. But she said that she had held a power of attorney from one of the suspects' aunt. Danny then met Sam and told him about his meeting with Jack Ross. In the morning, Galloway, Danny, and Sam went to Guantanamo. They intended to gather evidence at the crime scene and interrogate witnesses and Marines there, but neither Lieutenant Kendrick nor Colonel Jessup cooperated with them. Jessup only said that if he had agreed that Santiago was transferred to another unit, he got angry when Galloway questioned him regarding the murder of Santiago and the ban on the use of the Red Code by the Admiral. Jessup said that he did not apply the Red Code. Jessup became furious when they asked for a copy of Santiago's transfer letter. In the night, Galloway visited Danny to tell him that Colonel Markinson was gone just several hours after they departed from Cuba. They then returned to meet the suspects. Danny asked the suspects if Lieutenant Kendrick ordered them to give Santiago a red code, which contradicts previous investigations that stated that Santiago may not be touched. Then Dawson said that the order came 5 minutes after the troops were disbanded. Next, Danny and Galloway met Jack Ross to report the current conditions and new evidence. Based on their discussion, Jack Ross renewed the demand on the condition that both suspects confess their actions, then they will only be sentenced to 6 months in prison. This is because the case is very complicated, especially about an officer who will be promoted to general. Regarding the disappearance of Markinson, Jack Ross reminded them not to worry too much about him because he is a former intelligence officer.
Why did Markinson go UA?
You'll never know. You know what Markinson did for the first 7? Markinson's gone.
Division will give me a lot of room on this one. It's
Murder, conspiracy, conduct, unbecoming. You'll get 6 months.
After that, Danny met the two suspects again and asked them to confess their actions, but Dawson refused because they still felt innocent. They thought they were just carrying out orders from their superiors. They were also worried if they plead guilty, they would be fired from the Marine Corps, even though being a Marine was their dream. Seeing his client's attitude, Danny got angry because he thought that his client didn't want to be helped. It frustrated him because the next day was their trial. In the morning, both suspects were brought to trial. Their status was increased to the defendant. Jack Ross, as the military prosecutor, indicted Dawson and Downey have murdered Santiago. As the lawyer for the defendants, Danny presented a defense that his client was not guilty. This trial turned out to be Danny's first time handling a case in a court. After the trial, Danny, Galloway, and Sam discussed finding a witness that will testify to defend the defendants and look for evidence that could confirm the defendant's innocence. After a few days, the second trial began. Jack Ross explained the chronology of events that became the basis for the charges against the defendants. Danny denied the charges by saying that there was no poison. There was no intention of the defendant to kill Santiago, instead they were ordered to do. The trial continued with witnesses' testimony. The first witness was MC Guire, a special agent for the Naval Investigation Service who was asked about the truth of Santiago's letter sent to his institution. MC Guire confirmed the existence of the letter and he wanted to investigate, but because the only witness, Santiago, had died, the case could not be continued due to lack of evidence. The next witness was Corporal Edward. He was asked about the Red Code. Corporal Edward stated that Santiago had violated the chain of command and it was considered a betrayal of the code they agreed on. In addition, he also said that Lieutenant Kendrick forbade the mariners to touch Santiago.
What was the order?
Sir, he said Santiago wasn't to be touched.
Your witness.
At the next trial, the witness presented was Dr. Stone, the doctor who handled Santiago's corpse. He said that Santiago died from poisoning that contaminated his body and proceeded to describe the various types of poison and the symptoms caused. Danny asked if there was any chance Santiago was not poisoned but because of the illness he was suffering. He also submitted Santiago's medical document which proved his poor health condition, but the doctor denied it and declared that Santiago was indeed healthy.
Order for Private Santiago to be put on restricted duty. Mysterious poison that caused the accelerated chemical reaction.
Santiago was given a clean bill of health.
You'd have a lot to answer for.
He added that he routinely checked all Marines' physical condition. It sparked debate in the courtroom, but the doctors still believed that Santiago died from poisoning. To relieve their stress, Danny asked Galloway to have dinner together. On that occasion, Danny believed that his client was not guilty. They only carried out orders from their superiors, but Danny didn't have enough evidence and witnesses to prove that. The next trial, it was Corporal Jeffrey Barnes's turn to present as the witness. Barnes was asked about the Red Code. How a Marine received the Red Code and the types of it. According to his statement, several members had received a red code because of various mistakes they had made as well as the connection between the red code and the violations committed by Santiago. On that occasion, Barnes was asked about the red code in the Marine Training Module book. Then one night, Danny was surprised by the presence of Lieutenant Colonel Markinson in his car. Markinson said if he knew everything. He also said that Santiago had never been transferred from Guantanamo. Colonel Jessup still wanted Santiago at the base and wanted him to be trained. Santiago's transfer papers were composed a few days after Santiago died. Danny later asked Markinson to appear as his defendant's witness in court and he would give immunity from the law for his testimony, but Markinson didn't want the agreement. After that, Danny met Jack Ross to tell him that Santiago's transfer letter is fake and Colonel Jessup's statement is a lie. For that, Danny planned to ask Lieutenant Kendrick as a witness, but Jack Ross prevented him from calling officers as witnesses to be examined on serious charges because that would endanger his career. That's because according to existing regulations, if the accusation is not proven, then Danny would be charged with prison. In the next trial, finally, Lieutenant Kendrick was presented as a witness. He was asked about his duties in conducting coaching and assessment for the Marines. His statement showed discrepancies between what he said and the available data. Besides that, Danny also found discriminatory acts by Lieutenant Kendrick in conducting assessments of the Marines which were not recorded in the watchtower. This certainly adds to suspicions to the case of Santiago's death. Outside the court, Danny also found unrecorded flights that added up more suspicions. He then meets with Lieutenant Colonel Markinson to testify in court next Thursday. Markinson told Danny that in no time, Colonel Jessup will get promoted to Director of the National Security Council, thus he will get more obstacles dealing with him. However, Markinson, who is a true military, cannot go against the orders of his superiors, but he is aware of the actions taken by Colonel Jessup have crossed the line, therefore Markinson ended his own life.
I knew your son vaguely. 2 women whom you've never met will bring the truth to light. One reason, to stop it. Drew Markinson.
Meanwhile, in court, Downey admitted that if he was ordered by the platoon commander to do a red code on Santiago.
Here, Lieutenant Kendrick order a code red.
Private, answer the captain's question!
Yes, Captain. I was given an order by my squad leader, Lance.
Despite all the evidence, the death of Markinson, the key witness, made Danny frustrated because Downey's confession was not strong enough to defend himself, and realized he would lose in this case. The only way was to summon Colonel Jessup to have a discussion in court, but he realized that this person was not an ordinary person. He would face a lot of risks if he took that step, especially if the accusation was not proven. He would go to jail. Danny was so upset about it that he got drunk to relieve the stress of the matter until it sparked a debate between Danny and Galloway. Galloway wanted Colonel Jessup to appear in court, but Danny still worried about the risks that he will face. Now the only choice is to move on with a very big risk or back down, but deep within, Danny's kept thinking about the fate of his client, and if he stayed silent, he will let evil win on top of justice.
Damn it, let's put Jessup on the stand and end this thing.
Stupid!
Really only one question. Who are you?
Danny finally risked his life by summoning Colonel Jessup as a witness. Danny and his colleagues prepared various strategies and documents to be brought to court at the next trial and asked Colonel Jessup about Santiago's transfer, despite having all his stuff neatly lined up in the closet and no one else he called. About the red code order to Santiago to be trained, at first, the colonel denied giving Santiago the red code. Danny then asked the 2 conflicting orders from Colonel Jessup related to Santiago, the first regarding Santiago's transfer letter and the second regarding orders not to touch Santiago. Such questions made Colonel Joseph furious. He tried to divert the conversation with their role as soldiers in defending the country. Colonel Jessup offended Danny and his colleagues, who continue to defend and investigate Santiago's death as offensive statements to the Marines who served on the front lines. Danny again asked Colonel Jessup if he ordered the red code. The colonel got even angrier and out of control, so he admitted that in fact, he was the one who ordered the red code to Santiago.
Why did you orders?
Lieutenant Kendrick ordered the code red.
Did you order the code red? Goddamn right I did!
All the audience members were silent. The judge then stopped the trial to make a decision. Meanwhile, Colonel Jessup had to be escorted by the provost for further investigation. Colonel Jessup provoked Danny and threatened him like a child, but he was not afraid. He said that he was not afraid because he was a lawyer and a Navy officer. Sometime later, the judge finally reads out the verdict. They were not proven to be involved in the Conspiracy Act, but they were proven to have acted inappropriately against the Marines, so they were sentenced to be dishonorably discharged from the Marine Corps. After reading the verdict, Downey asked what did that mean. He still thought the actions he did were right and innocent, but Corporal Dawson claimed that they had made a mistake. Furthermore, Dawson said that we should fight for people who can't fight for themselves like Santiago. Before Dawson left the courtroom, Danny said that he doesn't need to wear a patch on his arm to have honor. Eventually, Jack Ross arrested Lieutenant Kendrick.